All right. Good morning. Rob Brown here with you, broadcasting live from the Hampton Inn. We are in Birmingham, down here last night for the Coach Safely uh, dinner, which was absolutely amazing. They had a standing room only crowd at Vestavia Hills Country Club, and Kevin Skarbinski spearheaded this. You had Paul Feinbaum and Lou Holtz up there on a question and answer panel discussion up on the stage. That was just really, really entertaining. Lou Holtz, man, that guy is sharp as a tack. Jack Crow was there. Dr. Andrews, we all know one of the preeminent orthopedic surgeon in the sports world, was supposed to be here. Had the plane on the runway, they said, to come up to Birmingham from Pensacola Gulf Breeze, and where the Andrews Orthopedic Clinic is, along with the one at St. Vincent's in Birmingham. And as they said, luck would have it, NFL preseason games, he had a surgery that had to be, attended to. That's his job, and he wasn't there, but he is a huge, huge advocate of the Coach Safely Foundation. This is their first dinner, and it was absolutely packed. This is going to be something to put on your list that you've got to attend every year for the future of college football. They're trying to train 80,000 coaches a year, get up to over 1 million coaches on basically how to coach better, safely, and injury prevention, you name it, and you've got just a who's who of people wanting to help out. We'll be with you 8 to 10 a.m. Central, 9 to 11 a.m. east of the Chattahoochee. We're going to be joined by Jordan Hill. 24/7 Sports covers the Georgia Bulldogs with us in the first segment. Section 2, Doug Dean will join us, the AU Dose, here in Birmingham. I was with Doug last night at the dinner. Top of the second hour, Jim Nagy, executive director of the Reese's Mobile Senior Bowl, will check in to talk about his preview of the 22 college football season, where he thinks the top players are, who some of them are. They'll start out with a big list of guys that they're looking at on their radar for the Senior Bowl, which will be in early February. And 41% of the players drafted were in the Senior Bowl last year. It's an amazing number. If I'm wrong, I'm going to be corrected. And in the fourth segment, our good friend Rodney Orr from Tuscaloosa, Tider Insider, will check in with us with the latest from what's going on at Alabama as they try to get ready to make another run at a national champion. But we're going to talk first right here with the defending national champion, Jordan Hill, who is Jordan. I don't know if you got a ring or not, but I can already tell from the coverage that you give us on this show for Georgia, they damn sure should have given you a national championship ring because, man, Georgia. We had Lauren Smith on Friday. We have a lot of great Georgia people, and you're just, another huge, huge source on Georgia that we are blessed to have on. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, always. And yeah, no championship ring, Rob. Maybe we can get a GoFundMe together or something like that.
Well, as much, I can tell you one thing. I got Georgia fans, Paul Wickenheiser out in Reno, Nevada, listening right now. They're everywhere. But what's going on in practice right now? I mean, everybody. I mean, that event last night at the Vestavia Hills Country Club for Coach Safely was just an absolute football Woodstock. I mean, and people are 264 hours away from kickoff of Georgia and Oregon. Yesterday we had on Matt Dean. His son is on the staff at Oregon with Dan Lanning. This is going to be a big, big game, and we're only 11 days away.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued just by what this game winds up looking like. And this week, based on what Kirby Smart told us Saturday after their second scrimmage of fall camp, the coaches specifically have already begun, probably on Monday, started getting ready for Oregon. So it's going to make for a big game. And I'm just very intrigued by what that game looks like on both sides for Georgia. I've seen the line, I think, is like 18, Georgia, 18-point favorite. And, I think Georgia wins that game, but I'm very intrigued. I mean, that's a whole lot of points for the very first game. And considering everything Georgia has lost, considering that Dan Lanning, kind of knows how the defensive staff works and some of the things they do, I think it's going to be very interesting. And I just really want to see what this Georgia team looks like coming out of the gates as they get ready, again, to try to defend this national championship.
Yeah, and the pressure. I mean, once you win one, that bar is raised so much higher. But it's Georgia. You're talking the 10th winningest program in the history of college football. You've also got Kirby Smart, who was with Nick Saban at Alabama, and while he was there, they won 4 national championships. So he's been there in this situation before, but his first time as a head coach. You noticing anything different about the way he's approaching this season from your standpoint, because you're very close to what goes on in Athens?
Yeah, I don't think so. And I think even going back to spring, it's what Kirby kind of talked about when he talked to the media about, the idea of defending the championship. He kind of pushed back on that notion because, he said this is a new team. And I think the thing that really helps him specifically, but even these players, he said every part of the calendar year, you start over. Once you get into winter workouts, it's a whole new thing. He said it was like that when we lost the Sugar Bowl to Texas. It was like it said that's how it is every year, and I think that is a positive thing if you're a Georgia fan hearing that. They're not. They haven't spent the offseason looking at those rings and being like, man, this sure looks nice. They've been working, and I think that goes back to what you're saying with him working with Saban. They understand that it's a total grind even after you win it all. I mean, there were reports, I can't remember after which Alabama championship, Saban was a little upset that they lost some recruiting time.
Can I stop you for a second? That is pretty funny. You're having to try to remember which national championship.
Exactly.
I mean, think about that. I mean, that is, I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's where he's come from. And that's why I'm saying, if you're a Georgia fan, you got to feel good.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that's the thing is that there has been no sense of entitlement or, feeling like obviously they accomplished something. And I don't think, it's not a situation where I don't think they enjoyed what they did, but they didn't just, kind of bask in it. This is a team, especially with the guys they have coming back. I think they saw it as like, all right, all these guys, these 15 guys that got drafted, they may still be riding high on what they accomplished probably before they got into rookie camp and learned it didn't mean a whole lot at the next level. But these guys, I think they want to do more. I think you see that with Stetson Bennett. This is a guy that a lot of people, and I'm working on a story before the Oregon game about Stetson. A lot of people thought, okay, this is his way out. He's going to ride off into the sunset. And, he's won this championship. He wants to go win another one. And, we'll see if he's able to. But I think that's sort of the attitude with these guys coming back and this coaching staff as well is they've won one and they appreciate that they won it, but they want to go do more.
Yeah. I mean, there are two kinds of people. Either the burden of success is too much for you to carry, or you just kind of push it off and say, look, that was great, but that was breakfast. Now I want lunch. You still got to have that mentality and stay hungry. Jimmy, I know you got some questions for Jordan Hill from 24/7 Sports on Georgia. Go ahead.
Well, on the other end of basking on a championship, I would have to think
no basking here.
The players that have moved on, in addition to the returning players, couldn't help but do that because the Georgia fan base had suffered for 41 years. Yeah. And even in the press conference after the game, they asked Kirby what his immediate thoughts were, and he goes, well, I just sure hope it isn't this long before we win the next one,
Yeah.
So clearly it was bearing on everybody. So it had to be just a gigantic relief. And now I think for the returning players, it allows them to, just concentrate on playing football and not have that obstacle in front of them anymore. And that can really help their mindset also.
No, I agree. And two, I think it can't be overstated. I think the fact it came against Alabama, as far as that burden, is humongous. Because if they didn't beat Alabama to win the national title and they had still, lost that SEC championship game, that narrative is still going to be out there. That storyline is still going to be, well, you can't beat Alabama. Well, they did. And this team, I think, has come back hungry. And even to what we were just talking about a minute ago, Rob, with some of these guys, Cedric Van Pran, the starting center, he talked about during spring practice.
Yeah.
After they won the national championship, they had a parade and a ceremony in Sanford Stadium, and there was a logo on the field celebrating the championship. When they went out there for spring practice, that logo was still there, and Cedric Van Pran was basically like, "What is that? What is that doing here? Like, get that off the field."
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to this motivation. Again, they're not going to downplay what it means. A lot of these guys grew up in Georgia. A lot of these guys probably grew up as Georgia fans. They know how close this team has gotten year after year. They know how long the drought had been. I think they appreciate what they accomplished. But this 2022 team, they're like, hey, man, we won it last year, but, we're 0-0 right now. We want to go try to do it again.
Yeah, and you look around at the SEC East. We talk a lot about the West. What's your thoughts on the East? Who do you think, you see all the games, is the biggest threat to Georgia this season? Is Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida? I mean, South Carolina, I think, is still a couple of years away, but if they keep recruiting the way they are, they're going to close the gap quickly.
Yeah, the Gamecocks are making good progress. To me, it's Tennessee. I just think with that offense, with Josh Heupel, with the fact that they've got Hendon Hooker, the quarterback, coming back, and also Cedric Tillman, a guy that went over 1,000 yards last year. To me, of everybody in the East, I think Tennessee's got the best chance. And especially, I mean, to me, the key for Tennessee to legitimately have a chance, because I still think Georgia wins the East, their secondary has to take some major steps forward, because they struggled very, very mightily against the pass last year. To me, Tennessee's the biggest threat. I'd probably put Kentucky after that. I think Florida, will make a bowl game, and I think they'll be taking steps in the right direction, because I really like Billy Napier. I think he's a very good coach. But I think year one, they're not quite there. To me, it's Tennessee, and then probably right behind Tennessee, it's probably Kentucky.
Yeah, and Florida, the talent. I mean, Dan Mullen worked himself out of that job. Whether you believe it or not, he obviously didn't like to recruit. Not that they don't have talent, but when you're at the University of Florida, you should have your pick of the litter in that state. And he wasn't doing it. Look over in the West. Georgia will have the crossover game. I think you've got Texas A&M this year.
No, Mississippi State and Auburn.
Mississippi State. Okay, of course, in Auburn. So you look in the West. What are your thoughts on outside of Alabama? A lot of people like A&M. They were 8-4 last year. They had a great recruiting class, but I'm a bigger believer that Arkansas is the biggest threat in the West. What are your thoughts?
I think Arkansas is right there. The team that, if they have the depth, because they lost a ton last year, I kind of think LSU could be sneaky. And I say 9-8 wins. I don't think they're going to be like a legitimate, playoff contender. But LSU is sort of my team. And then Mississippi State, because they have so much experience. And I was very impressed at media days listening to people talk about Will Rogers, the quarterback that's coming back. One of their receivers had a chance to talk to him, and he was like, I've seen him, he's watching cut-ups from when Mike Leach was at Texas Tech. He said he's just trying to find every little bit he can. I think the fact that he's back, this will be his third year playing quarterback for Mike Leach, and they've got a very experienced defense. Now, they lost a top 10, a top 15 offensive lineman in the draft, so that's huge, losing Charles Cross. But I think that team could be kind of sneaky. And again, this is a team that I think last year they beat 3 ranked teams, Mississippi State. So, I could see them kind of sneaking up there if their offense can be consistent and, fire off the way we know that Mike Leach offenses can. I think they'll be right up there.
Yeah. Jimmy, we got about a minute and a half before the break. Go ahead.
I think another sneaky team is Ole Miss, even though they're replacing a 2-year starter quarterback. I think Lane really feels good about either Altmaier or Dart. But in Oxford, for the first time in recent memory, they're talking about the defense, even though they brought in a lot of guys. They have a new defensive coordinator. Durkin moved on to Texas A&M. But there's a lot of optimism about the defense in Oxford, because we know that 2 years ago, even Kiffin was making jokes, about his own team's defense, and just how much they struggled. And now, man, it's been kind of the talk, not only of spring practice, but preseason camp. So I think any team that can put points on the board, like Ole Miss, that can combine it with defensive talent, is also going to be a threat.
Yeah. I mean, Jordan, along those lines, you think about Ole Miss, what we keep hearing from Yancey Porter, who covers Ole Miss for us. They've got depth on the defensive line. You've got to go back 30 years to see when they had Norman Hand and Tim Bowens in 92, 93, 94. That's almost unheard of at Ole Miss. And so we're about to go to a break, and I want to when we get back, what I'd like to do is to talk to you more about this Georgia team again, getting ready for the Oregon matchup coming up September 3rd. So you've got thoughts on that. And I know that is going to be a monster game. I would say it's the marquee game on the national schedule for opening weekend. Oregon will bring a bunch of fans, but it's going to be a home game for Georgia. And what they got to guard against is complacency. We'll address that after this quick break on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the Forest City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Jordan Hill, let's talk about this Georgia-Oregon matchup. And again, Jimmy's addressed it. I've addressed it. You have. Georgia, it seems to me like Kirby Smart's personality is all over this Georgia football team. Not just the team, but everybody over, down to the trainers, assistant coaches, you name it. So the matchup with Oregon, it's going to be big. If I'm Kirby Smart, I'm saying, guys, look, just because this game's in Atlanta and it's going to feel like a home game, don't let your guard down. Now, Bo Nix didn't have great success. He had some in the 2019 game, but other than that, wasn't good against them. But maybe he's a little bit better. He's got different talent personnel. But let's break that matchup down as you see it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the key is going to be if Georgia's offense can come out and score points, because I feel pretty good about the Georgia defense, even though they've lost 8 starters from last year. I think that they've got a good feel for what they want, what they need. Specifically at inside linebacker, they got a number of guys, I think, that have made the most of fall camp. And that's probably the position where they lost the most, losing 3 guys that were drafted in the top 3 rounds in April. But to me, it's just, I think the thing that makes Oregon dangerous in this game is their defense. I mean, again, you pair Dan Lanning with guys like Noah Sewell, the linebacker. They've got talent coming back on that side of the ball. If Georgia can consistently move the ball, again, they're having to replace 2 starting offensive linemen from last year. And right now they've been dealing with the guy that really looked like was going to be the starting right guard has been a little banged up during fall camp. So can they move the ball? Can they move the ball effectively against this Oregon defense? I think Bo Nix is in a good position for him in the fact that he's working with Kenny Dillingham again. He was the offensive coordinator at Auburn during his freshman year. I think that pairing is the most, is worthwhile for Bo in what could be his last year of playing college ball. He could decide to take another year if he so chooses with the COVID year. But I think that's a good pairing for him. He's with a guy that knows his strengths, knows how to put him in positions to succeed. But I don't feel like that offense has enough firepower around Bo if the Georgia offense is able to score like we know it can. But again, it's just a matter of how they show up against what I think is going to be a really good Oregon defense. They've got to move the ball effectively. I think the biggest key is Stetson Bennett in the passing game, because I think from what I've seen of Kenny McIntosh, the lead back, I mean, he might have been the star of fall camp. He has done a very good job kind of stepping into that role of Zamir White and James Cook. I think they're in good position to move the ball, but it's all about being able to do it on September 3rd.
Yeah, and when you talk about, and you hear this over and over, and Jimmy and I, and we hear it, when you've got a quarterback and he's lost a lot of personnel, they always like to say it's good to have a solid offensive line and solid running game. So it takes the pressure off of you. But we all know that there's enough pressure just being Georgia. And you won the national championship last year. So Oregon's going to be in there playing lights out against you. But that's a positive right there. Then you look at the receiving game. Jermaine Burton caught about 500 yards worth of passes last year, but he went over to Alabama. He's going over there to play with Bryce Young, and somebody's going to step up. 2 or 3 guys that we don't know of, we're not familiar with. That's just how it works. So, I mean, I think I like your assessment. I mean, yeah, Bo Nix is at a different school, but what does he have really around him that makes them demonstrably better than Georgia's defense? Even though you had all those guys drafted, they weren't that good because just they showed up. They had great players behind them pushing them. I think that's the key with making a great program better year after year is the competition, offense, defense, special teams. Without it, you can get complacent, and that'll be the ruin of your program. So that's it. Jimmy, jump in here.
Well, I can't think of many intangibles that are going to favor Oregon in this game. I mean, you've got a new head coach who brings in different schemes on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. Plus, you've got a quarterback who's a transfer that is trying to adjust to those schemes. Plus, you're playing Georgia in the Mercedes-Benz Dome in your first game, and that's a lot of stuff to try to pick up and get yourself prepared for against a team like Georgia that has tremendous talent. And even though it's inexperienced on the defensive side of the ball, they have a lot of depth. And it's just going to take Oregon, I think, probably 4 or 5 games at a minimum to feel comfortable learning those schemes with, again, a new coaching staff. But again, though, should be interesting because Oregon can come in there, and feel like they're playing with house money because not many people feel that they're going to have a chance in the game. But again, a quarterback that, and I don't know if they've officially named him the starter, but Nix has had his hands full with Georgia in recent years, and we'll just have to see what happens. Wait till they kick it off because you never know until you get these young players in a real game situation to see what happens. But I wanted to ask real quickly, we all know how important the quarterback position is, and we all know that that situation can change on one play but in any position if a key player gets injured. But how's that backup quarterback situation developing at Georgia right now?
Yeah, that's something Kirby Smart talked a good bit about on Saturday. And I mean, they feel really good about really who look like the 2 top options, Carson Beck and Brock Vandagriff. Carson's a little bit more experienced. I think if something were to happen to Stetson, it would be Carson. He's been at Georgia a year longer than Brock has, but heard a lot of good things about Brock Vandagriff. Seems like with another year under his belt, really having a full year of understanding the system and what Todd Monken is expecting, I think that he feels really good, that Brock Vandagriff has taken real strides in his game and feeling comfortable and knowing what the expectation is. So I think they really have 2 really good options behind Stetson if something were to happen. I think Carson Beck would be the guy just because he's been there and kind of built that trust with this coaching staff and has grown. I think that's something Kirby has talked about in the past, how he's learned to take it seriously and really made strides with what is expected out of a quarterback at Georgia. So those are the 2 guys. And Gunnar Stockton's a true freshman. He's the other scholarship quarterback. Not quite ready, but he is really impressed in fall camp. And he's a guy down the line that I think will be a really good option for Georgia.
Got a question for you from one of our listeners saying about the defense with Georgia. As good as they were last year, Nakobe Dean was not even taken in the first round, and he was really the heart and soul of that defense. is there any like him on the roster that you see stepping up in practice preseason?
So it's hard to say because Nakobe was so good, but the guy specifically at his position that we've heard about since they pretty much, laced him up in spring practice was Jamon Dumas Johnson. And he's just a sophomore. He's a guy that has gotten a lot of respect for he's only played in a few games. Last year was his first year. But I mean, I think that he's a guy that's ready to be the next start inside linebacker. They have had, Roquan Smith, Monty Rice, obviously Nakobe. Jamon looks the part. And from what he's talked to us, we had a chance to talk to him last week. He talked about wanting to grow as a leader. And I think if you're hearing that, if you're Kirby Smart, that kind of, your ears kind of perk up because this guy that has made plays in practice, and I think he's ready to get everybody around him rallied to get ready for the year.
Yeah, I mean, you love a guy like Nakobe Dean. I mean, yeah, he was undersized. He wasn't this, he wasn't that. All he did was really lead a defense that was, I mean, that was a generationally incredible defense that you had last year. So, and all right, one more thing before we let you go. Recruiting wise, the state of Georgia this year, how do you rank this class of high school stars compared to the typical year, like the last 3 or 4?
I think it's honestly been kind of down. It's not been quite as strong. Georgia, especially per capita, is usually one of the better states.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's kind of down. And Georgia's gotten a few guys. But if you look at that top list, Georgia really hasn't landed very many from the state. And I think it's there's guys they were in on and really wanted, like Justice Haynes and Caleb Downs, some of those top players. But Georgia's kind of looked outside the state, going after guys from Florida, trying to get some guys from Texas. I think it's a little bit down compared to what we're used to. And I still think it's, one of the most talented states, but just a situation where I think 2024 is not quite what we've gotten used to seeing. And I feel pretty good that in the next year, it'll go back to what we're expecting.
And they're not going to move the Florida-Georgia game out of Jacksonville, are they?
Nope, I don't. As much as, that's when we're almost to the football season.
Exactly.
You start seeing those stories, you're like, all right, about to lace them up.
Yeah, I mean, when Tony Barnhart was on here with us last week, and he talked about it, and of course, I didn't even ask Lauren about it. I mean, because he may have grabbed me through the phone, but I hope they never do. And that's what makes college football so special. The games like that in Jacksonville, and there you've got the number 3 and the number 4 high school state country Division I football players. That's why that game is just it's awesome. But look, Jordan Hill, thank you so much for taking time out of your Tuesday morning to join us. You are really, really good. How long have you been covering Georgia?
So I graduated from Georgia in 2016, covered them then, and then I came back in February. I'd been covering Auburn for a little bit, so I've been back on the ground here for I guess about 6 months, and just been hitting the ground running.
Yeah. So I mean, look, you really know Georgia, and this has been fantastic. Look forward to having you on again next week. And if anything breaks, whatever we can do to help promote you, tell people how they can follow you, and look forward to having you on always.
Yeah, always, guys. I appreciate it.
And it's 24/7 Sports. And what's your Twitter handle?
At Jordan Davis Hill, or you can also follow at dawgs247.
All right. Hey, thank you so much. To the next one. All right. That is a great report from Georgia. Jimmy, you made a good point about Georgia versus Oregon. Matt Dean yesterday, his son's on the staff out there at Oregon. They are going to come in with a good plan, but I tell you, I look at Georgia and I see so much of Alabama in Georgia. It's not an accident. Kirby Smart learned a lot from Nick Saban. If you were looking at this game and you didn't have skin in it, it's hard for all of us to remove ourselves, to recuse ourselves. It's impossible because we're down here in the South and we know these teams. We are familiar with them, but let's say you were Joe Sixpack living out in Olathe, Kansas, Oregon versus Georgia. What would you be thinking?
Yeah, you're thinking Georgia. They've just got a lot of momentum. They're playing in their backyard. Team's going to be 90% Georgia fans. I mean, all the intangibles are just in their favor. The only area where you might have a concern is maybe overconfidence or maybe a number of players who are very talented haven't had a lot of playing time in big game situations, so they might be a little nervous. And that can sometimes cause slow starts, but eventually they'll get into the flow of the game and everything will be normal. But I just can't think of a lot of things that favor Oregon. But at the same time, I think Lanning will use this as a measuring stick, because Georgia is a great measuring stick for a program like Oregon, who has won championships in recent years. So a lot of the players are used to winning. They don't like losing. And, they could really be, inspired to really, come out there and try to prove some people wrong. So there's just always incentives in college football, and the unpredictability of this sport is just unmatched. You just never know. And that's why you're always taking a chance when you try to make predictions involving games, because, you never know what's going on with a lot of players. They might be, struggling in a class or two. Their mind might be on that. They might be having girlfriend problems. They might have problems in their hometown. A lot of these kids sometimes don't grow up in the best situation. So there's a lot of things besides football at college what you're thinking about, because you're trying to stay eligible academically, and sometimes you can feel overwhelmed there. But again, it's just again, the number of storylines that are involved with every team just makes college football just a fascinating game.
Yeah, it really does. And I thought that was a great discussion we had with Rick Neuheisel yesterday on Sidelines about what's going on with the Big Ten and the Pac-12. Of course, now, with Southern Cal and UCLA joining the Big Ten, and you brought it up, the Pacific Division of the Big Ten, what about the possibility of that becoming one conference? I mean, they try to control the West Coast, Middle America, and they've got, East Coast, well, not real strong, but with Maryland and Rutgers, but those are Big Ten schools. But they're trying to get into those big markets. And again, you're talking about monopoly. 60-70% of the television sets in America are located in the Big Ten's geographical footprint. That is huge. SEC. Think about if the SEC had not been as aggressive back in 2012 and brought in Missouri and Texas A&M. Missouri's about 7 million people, but Texas is 30 million people that we know of. Wow. That was a brilliant move on the part of former Southeastern Conference Commissioner Mike Slive to jump on that, because and now that made it easier, I think, for Texas to join, because they're able to sell to those kids on the recruiting trail. Look, the same thing now that A&M's been doing for the last 10 years. And I think the biggest concern, I always say this, I just don't want to see us have 2 big super conferences or 3 of them. I don't want to see just 60 teams and then a bunch of teams that schools that have to just football, or they just play at a very minimal level. We've got enough snowflakes and cupcakes out there in our country. We need college football, and that's what that Coach Safely dinner last night that Kevin Skarbinski and Jack Crow spearheaded was amazing. And to hear Lou Holtz, and we're going to talk about that more in a minute with Doug Dean, but Lou Holtz, the passion that man has. And I think about, Pete Cordelli, our friend that played for him at NC State, coached with him for 14 years at Arkansas, Minnesota, and Notre Dame. And again, Tommy Christenberry, my friend that played for Coach Holtz at Arkansas. And Chuck Lanza from CBHS, Chuck was a year below us, played for him at Notre Dame. Great memories, great stuff. We're going to talk about it after this quick break with more Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, Call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back here with you. Jimmy Hodge and I, great discussion there with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia. Now we go to, I'm actually in the Magic City over here in Mountain Brook at the Hampton Inn, broadcasting live our remote studios here this morning. And I tell you one thing, this chair I'm sitting in, I think I'm going to have scoliosis by the end of the show. I feel like one of those hunchback. Oh, this is hurting. But Doug Dean, make us all a little wiser. It's great seeing you last night at the Coach Safely event at Vestavia Hills Country Club. I mean, I tell you, I was walking around in there. I was looking for Ted Knight. I thought I was at Bushwood. You'll get nothing and you'll like it. But welcome to Sidelines, Doug. Spalding was there.
Good morning.
I saw him.
Good morning, Rob, Jimmy, and the vivacious Audrey.
Yeah.
It was a great time. Good to have you in Birmingham, Rob. And it was a little surreal for me at Vestavia Country Club for that event last night, featuring Lou Holtz, mostly interviewed by Paul Feinbaum. It was gracious of Paul to, to yield to Holtz about 90% of the time and not make the evening about Paul himself. But surreal because only back at May 21 in that very ballroom was my daughter Lauren's wedding reception. So it's kind of good to return to the scene of the crime, so to speak. A lot of times on your show, your guest and both of you pivot in, which I enjoy. I think all your listeners enjoy. You pivot into not just, who's most likely to run the table or win a championship or who's going to struggle, who's on the hot seat, all the usual banter, but you also incorporate into it life lessons and the things that, frankly, if we're well grounded, at least, are more important long term than merely games themselves or championships. And Lou Holtz certainly treated us to that for, as you said, Rob, a very important cause. This Coach Safely that Jack Crow has really embraced his legacy. He certainly has a lot of story to tell about coaching. I guess my favorite would be Jack getting fired probably 10 or 15 times on the sideline by Patrick Fain. Not really fired, but threatened to be fired. But it was a great event. And I'll warm us up here. Your listeners who couldn't be there might enjoy a couple of tidbits from Holtz. Holtz's, cover your ears, ladies and children. It's not too bad, just PG. Holtz's favorite bumper sticker, he reported, reads, "Jesus loves you, but everybody else thinks you're an asshole."
Yeah. His wife, Beth, who died 2.5 years ago, they were married 59 years. That was some of the best I've ever heard from Lou Holtz.
And he was an underdog, as he reported, Rob. She turned him down, was uninterested, and he stayed persistent, and it worked out. I think when he started getting jobs and winning games, she gave him a second look.
Correct.
And then a story I love, which come with me, listeners, and Sidelines Live, back to a good year for me because I was getting myself matriculated out of John Carroll High School, home of Heisman Trophy winner Pat Sullivan, as you know.
Of course.
And it was a great year for the Arkansas Razorbacks, 1977. Head coach Lou Holtz. They had it really rolling behind the Veer attack. Don't you miss seeing some of that heavy option attack. I do anyway.
I do.
wish we had more.
Yeah.
Wish we had more diverse offenses, but you know why we don't. It's all about recruiting and getting quarterbacks to the league. But the Razorbacks ran off an 11-1 record, losing only in the conference. I also missed the SWC to Texas 13-9. I'm getting to Holtz's point, if you'll bear with me. And then along came for their bowl game, coached by the great Barry Switzer, the mighty 10-1 regular season Oklahoma lost. They also lost only to Texas in the Red River shootout. Well, coming into the bowl game, as Holtz told the story last night, he had to suspend 3 of his very best offensive players for the bowl, and another one was injured in bowl practice. So Arkansas, in the mind of lost wages in Nevada, was a 21-point underdog. And Holtz said, and this is a life lesson for every young person, anybody. His players were only talking about the reasons they couldn't win the game with these players out. And Holtz, as only he's so good at, said, I've heard a lot about how we couldn't win. Is there anybody in the room that will talk about how we can win? And the whole room burst out in laughter. One player said, well, we have the best defense in the country, coach. And he said, that's true. So what that means is we aren't going to lose nearly as bad as people think.
I heard that was classic.
And you know who I'll let you guys respond. It was a lot of fun, but, and you got your own cliff notes of what made Holtz such an engaging speaker last night. Try this on for size. That Razorbacks team or coaching staff, his DC was the great Monty Kiffin.
Yeah.
Knows a little about defense. Pete Carroll was coaching the DBs. Now, I think he was a GA, but maybe he had a prominent role. And then Jimmy will like this. The great John Mitchell, Bama Letterman, was coaching the defensive end. So the backup running back rushed for 205 yards, setting an Orange Bowl record. And Arkansas destroyed Oklahoma 31-6. So think about, like you say, Rob, find excuses to win.
Yeah, and Lou Holtz, I've always been a fan of his, and I can remember, and we all can, that 77 Orange Bowl against Arkansas. He suspended those 3 players, and our friend Tommy Christenberry, who's on the show with us from time to time when he can be, played for Coach Holtz, and that game, everybody remembers it because it's sort of like, don't tell me what we can't do. Tell me how we're going to win. And if you don't believe in that, you don't need to be on this team. You don't need to be in this locker room. And that's a philosophy that Coach Holtz carries in life. And the man is, he's a devout Catholic. He's the real deal. And he told some stories, just his ability to tell stories that make sense, not just in winning a football game, but they apply to real life situations. I mean, I think about my old pledge trainer, Phil Thompson. Every morning at 05:30 on the drill field at Auburn, we had to go work. We had to run. And if anybody was late, he would say, you're only as strong as your weakest link. You could have 47 guys on time. One guy show up late, you ran extra. Guess what you started doing? You started making sure somebody covered the sleeper, it's just Lou Holtz. Can you imagine playing? Tommy Christenberry texted me last night. So did Scott Paulo, 2 Razorback friends of mine, said that's why his players would run through a wall for him. They love him to this day.
100%. Feinbaum had to, and Paul did a nice job.
He
Paul
did.
Had a real gift at interviewing, and he was sort of, mostly self-deprecating during he gave the limelight to Holtz, as it should have been. We talked a lot about NIL, and I've probably on occasion come off a little paternalistic that these athletes need our guidance about how to form their character and all. And maybe they do, maybe some of them do, but they're grown men playing football and getting an edge and hold a point in your ears for a while and think there's a lot of truth to it. Not a broad brush. This is not true of every athlete of any sport. He said, and I quote, players right now seem to be all about how to make a living. but we need to teach them how to make a life when they get out of athletics.
Absolutely. Jimmy, it was really good. And I tell you, Paul Feinbaum, back when David Letterman was on TV, before he got too political, he was really funny. Paul Feinbaum's like that, interviewing people. I mean, he brought the house down last night with some of his questions, but it was fun. But Jimmy, you followed Lou Holtz for a long time, and you think about wherever he's been, the success that he's had, but it's him as a person, is his ability to make, like you say, self-deprecating, that sets him apart from a lot of coaches. He's not too hard on himself. And if you can't laugh at yourself, you'll crack.
No, he's great on the banquet circuit because he's always very self-deprecating, and he's funny, and he's outgoing, and he's interacting with those type of audiences who want to hear stories that you normally don't get access to. But that particular Orange Bowl, when they beat Oklahoma like that and really stunned the college football world, it represented a time where New Year's Day was the most dramatic single day in college football, because you started with the Orange Bowl. The Orange Bowl capped off January 1st, but you started with the Cotton Bowl and the Sugar Bowl being played almost simultaneously. And then the middle afternoon spot was reserved for the Rose Bowl, and then it was capped by the Orange Bowl as the night game. And on that particular day, Texas was number one in the country. In fact, when Holtz talked about Texas and Oklahoma both losing to, Oklahoma and Arkansas both losing. I mean, that was three of the top five teams right there.
Yeah.
In the same league. So Texas played Notre Dame, and Notre Dame had lost early in the year to Ole Miss, but they just blew Texas out that day. And then Alabama was number two. They beat Ohio State 35-6. It was the first time Ohio State and Alabama had ever played, the only time Coach Bryant and Woody Hayes ever met. And then the nightcap that really determined everything. A lot of people thought Oklahoma would be national champions if they won that game. They get blown out. And so Alabama, though, they win 35-6. And they stay at number. Notre Dame was ranked number 5. They jumped from number 5 over Alabama to number 1. And what was so ironic was on opening day that 77 season, Alabama beat Ole Miss 34-13 in the season opener. Notre Dame the very next week goes down to Jackson and loses to that same Ole Miss team 20-13.
Yeah.
And then you can imagine the uproar that occurred when Notre Dame jumped from number 5 to number 1 over Alabama to win the national championship.
Well, it was
losing
the same
to Ole Miss, but
Jimmy,
a week after they'd lost to Alabama by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, it was the same thing that happened with Auburn, Doug and Jimmy, back in 1983. I was there in New Orleans, and that morning they took a survey of the Knight Ridder newspaper writers, and the majority of them, 32 of them, said if number 5 Miami beats number 1 Nebraska, they'll leapfrog them to number 1. Of course, we all know what happened. Number 4 Georgia beat Texas, who was number 2, 10-9. Number 3 Auburn beat Michigan at 9-7. I was talking with Ben Tamburello and Yan.
Didn't blow them out enough.
Yeah, it didn't blow them out enough. It was always.
It wouldn't have mattered. The NBC, sorry to interrupt. NBC had marketed that Orange Bowl as the national championship game.
Yeah,
which is absurd. And that's why everything we're saying is Jimmy's for an Auburn fan or anybody to claim objectivity. You have to say that was outrageous that Notre Dame jumped Alabama in those circumstances, even though I got a lot of love for my Irish, my second favorite. I can't help the fact that I went to college in Indiana and I'm Catholic. But it was wrong, and it was absurd to not at least let Auburn and Miami share the title in '83. when you look at the schedule that Auburn team had to play. But hey, that's why we call it, most of us, the mythical national championship, at least until the playoff. And in some years, there's a little bit of mythical flavor, even to which 4 teams get in.
Yeah. Well, you go back and you think about what happened in '83 when Miami jumped over Auburn. I mean, and that game, hell, somebody gave Auburn the national championship, and Auburn, for whatever reason, I think I know why.
New York Times.
Yeah, the New York Times did. Because I still have the poster. But the schools. I mean, Alabama, the year after, Coach Bryant had retired and subsequently died 30 days after he retired. They went from 6 to 11 national championships. They had a hell of a summer. But they went and claimed them retroactively, some of them going back 58 years. Texas A&M, when they joined the SEC, they won 2 more national championships that day that they came into the league. They added 2. Michigan claims 11. I mean, but you know what? The deal is Don Criqui, his one national college football game of the year for NBC, and he's going to tell you who the national champion is going to be. That's when you had a small group.
They were promoting their game.
Yeah.
Well, and Don Criqui is a Notre Dame girl too.
But I'm talking about the 80. Didn't he broadcast the '83 Orange Bowl?
He's a Notre Dame graduate.
Yeah, but when Miami beat Nebraska, I
think it was all about promoting that game. Who can blame them for that?
Yeah,
And it's a shame when you go against both Schembechler defense and they're doing their job to stop you, and Pat Dye just wasn't. He hadn't built that offense to air it out. Not with Randy Campbell. I love you, Randy, but I wanted, speaking of that era, I can tell you this will appeal to more than just Auburn fans. And you may have seen it, Rob or Jimmy, but there is a documentary coming out any day now on the life and legacy of Coach Pat Dye, and it's called Mighty. I forgot the subtitle, and I'll give you a couple of movie teasers. His longtime partner, girlfriend, Nancy McDonald, who was dean of the Auburn Montgomery School of Nursing class act, a quote she gave was, "I had a friend tell me that Coach Dye or Pat was just a big old teddy bear." And I told that friend, yeah, he's got a grizzly in there too.
Yeah.
And the other one from the great Fran Tarkenton said, I was shocked to hear this. You consider who all Fran Tarkenton was around playing football. Fran said, the 2 best football players I ever played with were Pat Dye and Mike Ditka. That's tall cotton, Rob.
Yeah. Well, they showed a picture, Jimmy. I got a teaser of this thing last night. Pat Dye with his swimming trunks on at a watering hole. Holy cow. He looked like a bodybuilder. And he said years later, Brett Favre said, we were out at his cabin at his ranch and having some cocktails, said, "Coach, what happened to you?" He goes, "Hell, I got old." But I'll tell you one thing.
I heard he was a kid compared to his brother.
Yeah. Stand by 1 second. We're going to take a break, talk about it after this. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Brown back with Doug Dean, AU Dose. We're all here in Birmingham. Jimmy Hodge on here with us talking. Jimmy and Doug, you go back. One thing y'all are right about, a lot about, but one thing in particular, New Year's Day used to be so special. It still is. It's the beginning of a new year and all that. But how many, we want things to change. And then a lot of times when they change, it's, hey, be careful what you wish for. I mean, New Year's Day, there were so many possibilities of who would be the national champion, Doug. And sometimes
what is special about players sitting out their New Year's Day bowl game because it's borderline meaningless?
I hate it. I think they should be banished. Anyone that sits out, I do not like it. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
You're a team. And you know what? When you go back for the 10, 20, 30, 40-year reunions and whatever, I don't know if I'd even want to talk to you. You can't.
It's a different world. I'm not crazy about it.
But we can't accept it. You can't opt out in combat. You can't opt out as a parent.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to see that when the playoff gets expanded, though. And you're going to have all those more prominent bowl games that will be involved in every playoff. It'll just rotate which games get the semifinals and the championship, as opposed to which games get the quarterfinal game. So that's going to end, I think, pretty soon.
Doug, Tigers 264 hours away from the big showdown with the Mercer Bears. Trouble sleeping at night. Waller May told me he's having to take, sleeping pills. Todd Foray, Tate Davis, guys around the South, I know they're worried. No, seriously. Something tells me Brian Harson's growing very comfortable in who he is. I'm not predicting Auburn's going to win the national championship this year, but for God's sakes, man, if Auburn people would quit having this self-loathing attitude, a lot of them waiting for the other shoe to drop. Oh my God, TJ Finley's the quarterback. Well, you know what? See what happens. But I'm telling you, the negativity and the whining, it's just disgusting.
Well, I might have on a bad day slipped in. You have stresses in your life that affect your attitude if you're not grounded, but I might have had a lapse of frustration that there's still uncertain QB position. Now, some would say there is certainty. TJ Finley appears to have shown the most readiness, consistency, and that, like I've said, there's a segment of Auburn people who can't get out of their mind Finley's mistakes last year, most notably in the game against Houston and Birmingham, when we airmailed 2 or 3 would-be touchdown passes into the stands, not 2 yards overhead. So, but he might be a different guy. You see it happen occasionally. I think this QB race, to your point, Rob, is still a little up in the air. I think Robbie Ashford has shown a flash of athleticism that's going to get him on the field, but in a situational package kind of role, like third and short, where you can use his legs as an extra running threat, an RPO threat. I'm not the biggest mystery is why Calzada has not shown up and been more ready to at least be competent, and maybe that's changing. So I've never felt more prophetic in saying that before the first 5-6 games run their course, unless Finley has really had all the light bulbs go off, which is not impossible, it'll just be shocking. I think you're going to hear the phrase quarterback controversy uttered in relation to this Auburn offense, and I hope I'm wrong. And so back to your point, presumption when I stepped out because of what I was hearing coming out of camp, the unity on this team, how good the defense looks. And I took a pretty bold pick of 9-3 for this Auburn team. Losing to Georgia and Alabama, that's chalk. But losing on the road to Ole Miss, because I think it's hard to beat Lane Kiffin 3 years in a row. I'm feeling wobbly on that pick right now, purely because of the uncertainty at QB.
Yeah, they've got to do it. Look, we've run out of time for this segment, but Doug, we're gonna talk more about it. But that's the issue. You've got a starter, but is he the right man? That's why you got to play the games. But Doug, this great segment, and we are going to fix things. And Jimmy's right. We go to that 12-team playoff. you won't see players
Well, that would be huge.
quitting on the
We
team.
can make the bowl games relevant again.
Yeah, let's do it. Celebrate college football. Doug, thanks so much.
Jimmy and Rob, good to connect with y'all as always. Y'all have a great day.
All right, you do too. Thanks so much. Let's
man.
bring in we need to bring in one of our folks. We're gonna stand by here. We're trying to bring in Jim Nagy from Executive Director of the Senior Bowl, and all right, Rob Brown back here with you with Jimmy Hodge. Be joined now by Jim Nagy, Executive Director of the Reese's Mobile Senior Bowl down in Mobile. And Jim, I tell you one thing, right now, 264 hours away from the start of SEC football. Of course, Vanderbilt goes out to Hawaii this weekend. But, man, we just got through going over how it used to be, the battle for the national championship, New Year's Day. There were a lot of possibilities when you got up in the morning. But right now, there are a lot of possibilities about the season, which actually starts Friday. Nevada will be playing, and you've got lots of games around the country. They all matter. And you, better than anybody, Jim, get a chance to see the products, the fruits of the hard work from not just the Power Five, the household name schools, but the Group of Five, and just North Dakota State guys that people aren't familiar with. And I always ask you, where are the offensive linemen? Where are the best players? And I love your answers, and I want people to hear them, because there are a lot of great players out there that you don't know about that are going to be stars one day. That's why you got to celebrate the game from coast to coast and everywhere in between.
Yeah, good morning, Rob. Appreciate you having me back on. Yeah, we're excited here. We're releasing our watch list tomorrow. Close to 500 names on that. We've got done watching all of our tape from last year, from guys' junior seasons, and got that list finally wrapped up this week. And we'll be pushing that. And then we got games this weekend. I know I'll be up at a game in Montgomery, Alabama. Stephen F. Austin against Jacksonville State, kind of kicking off with. Got a couple small school prospects to watch in that game, but yeah, you can find good players anywhere. I think the Senior Bowl has been proof of that the last couple of years. 3 years ago we had a Division III guy go in the fourth round who now starts for the Jaguars, Ben Barch, an offensive lineman, and then 2 years ago another D3 guy from Wisconsin Whitewater, Quinn Miners, went in the third round and is starting right now for Denver. So you can find him anywhere. I was just up in Jackson, Mississippi, speaking to the team at Jackson State, and that's the one message that Coach Prime wanted me to convey to his team, is that NFL is going to find you anywhere, and I feel the Senior Bowl is the same way. So there's good players at every level, and you just need to look hard and find them.
Well, look, if you and Rick Neuheisel were the commissioners of college football, America would be a better country. I love your optimism, because that's what I see. It's like, hey, we'll find you anywhere. You spent 18 years in the NFL with the Green Bay Packers. You got a Super Bowl ring there. You got a couple of Super Bowl rings with New England with Bill Belichick, and you got a ring at Seattle with Pete Carroll. You've seen so much football around the country. Talk about why maybe we're not seeing, at least in the SEC, as many elite offensive linemen, especially the left tackle position.
I guess my one theory would be that a lot of these SEC programs just go after the ready-made guy. The kids that out of high school are already 6'5", 300 pounds, and where some of the smaller schools need to take high school tight ends and grow them and develop them. So that's my only.
And
he led the way with 100 play second with 77. So SEC is really, they crank out about every position, and they've done a good job on the offensive line, but maybe not up to the same as they have it like DB and defensive line and wide receiver, certainly over the last few years.
You don't think it has anything to do with, and Jimmy Hodge is on here with us, but Jimmy made a point about, you're it out. I mean, a lot of the, 7th and 8th grade football running backs can't be over 150 pounds. So guys they're just discouraged from getting big. Now, if you're 6'6", you put the weight on there, there's an offensive lineman, but that is a small group of people to choose from. So that's encouraging. Jacksonville State, go back the last 5 or 6 years, Jim, they probably drafted to the NFL, hadn't they?
They've had a decent number.
Yeah. Audrey,
but Jacksonville State's been a great program, and
yeah. Well, and you think about trouble with your audio. Has that been a good thing for college football in your opinion? Yeah. Jim, okay. Well, Jimmy Hodge, jump in here with us. We're having a little trouble with Jim Nagy's audio. Okay. We'll take a quick, see if we can get everybody back on here. Jim Nagy, can you hear me? All right, we're back. A little bit of a problem with the audio. We're staying at the Hampton Inn here in Mountain Brook, and I think sometimes hotels are not the best places for doing the show, I guess. But you were making really great points about why it's so hard to find offensive linemen in the SEC, because the teams typically want to go for the ready-made guy that's already there. And you get to a smaller school, guys are more willing to spend 2 or 3 years in the weight room, kind of the old Nebraska model where guys would go away for 2 or 3 years and develop as first-rate offensive linemen. It becomes a culture to develop like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think Nebraska's, old school Nebraska is a good example of that. But it's just about the program showing patience, and when you're a big program and you can go after 4 and 5 star guys that are 6'5", 290 pounds plus. I mean, it's easier, I think, but the payoff for the smaller schools is just the patience and the development and, to me, it would actually probably be a little more fun to recruit at that level because it's a lot like NFL scouting. You really need to project what players will be 2 or 3 years down the road. But yeah, I think credit, you got to give a lot of credit to what's going on at some of these, FCS and Group of 5 schools right now with that position group.
Yeah, Jimmy, jump in here.
Well, Jim, with the transfer portal, things have really changed. I mean, you have a lot of players that were highly touted in high school, and when you make that adjustment to the Power 5, especially some of those heavyweight programs, those aren't places, especially in the offensive line, where you can just come in and start. I mean, it takes many times 2 or 3 years because those schemes are complicated in a lot of places. So as a result, after a year or two, and not only is it limited to the offensive line, but just various positions, kids want to play right now because the transfer rules allow players to make one transfer move and still have immediate eligibility. So how has that changed your job and the job of your committee members in selecting candidates for the Senior Bowl, and then also tracking their development as they go from a situation in which they weren't getting playing time to maybe an FCS school or even a smaller division school where they're getting different playing time, but they're adjusting to different schemes and taking time to learn those systems?
Yeah, it hasn't impacted us all that much. I mean, our scouting staff, we give them a list of players going into the fall, and the hardest part is really identifying the movement over the summer. Like we're trying to watch this tape over the spring and the summer, and we'll know where they were. For example, in this year, we knew where they were last fall in 2021, so we knew which tape to watch. But then they jump in the portal, and you don't know where they're going to end up. I mean, we even had a case last night where we're getting ready to put together our watch list, and there was a corner from Auburn who
Jim, can you hold that thought for just a second? We're going to take a quick break, and I want to hear this because this is great stuff. But we'll take a break. Be back in 1 minute.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Jim Nagy, you were talking about an Auburn cornerback in the draft process. Let's keep going.
Yeah, he just, and he just popped up and landed at Maryland here in the last couple of days. So here we are in the middle of August, and guys are still switching teams. So that's the only difficulty, when it applies to the Senior Bowl, is just tracking where these guys are. Once they land where they're at, our staff will be at games every weekend this fall, and we'll be at 12, 13 games a weekend, usually on average, and be watching the tape all week. So it's really just tracking them through the spring and summer and see where they end up if they decide to portal before their senior year.
Yeah, and the portal's got to make it chaotic. I can't imagine when you do a football magazine now, you've got to have one hell of a website to show all the changes that have taken place. Do you all look at that if a guy's transferred 2 or 3 times and say, why is he doing that? What does that do to their draft status or stock?
Yeah, NFL teams will certainly look at that. You got to look into, sometimes there's a pattern. Sometimes if a guy's transferred a couple times in college, you go back into high school, and he transferred a couple times in high school. And when you get down to the root of it, it's he's got helicopter parents that are always looking for a better situation for their kid, and that's you don't want that want that at the NFL level. It's just you're trying to minimize the maintenance. When you get to the NFL level, they actually have a lot less support staff up there than they do at the college level. A lot of these major programs. So there's a lot less hand-holding going on. You need guys that are mature and responsible and can take care of themselves. And you see a guy jumping every year or every other year to a new school. Sometimes it sheds light into just how they're wired. So yeah, certainly teams will look into that.
So, in one other thing, I know you got a tight schedule this morning. The Senior Bowl, what were y'all able to do? Was last year, would you consider it a success? You had some crazy weather, and you can't control that. But I know, and I had a parent with the virus that I had to stay in town and help, and I did not get to go at the last minute. I'm coming this year, and everybody I talked to that went to the Senior Bowl said it is absolutely just a spectacular event. Everybody there, Molly, everybody there lays out the red carpet, and you're standing there in practice around, like you said, Rob, you told me, Jim, the owners, the coaches, the legends. It's just a week, and the planning never stops, does it?
No, it doesn't, and it is a great week. I mean, it sounds self-serving for me to sit here and say that in the chair that I sit in now, but I've always felt that way. I've been coming to the Senior Bowl since 1998. I think was my first year coming down here, and it's just unique. Mobile's not a real big city, and when you've got the whole NFL descending on a town this size, you pop in and out of restaurants and bars in town, and you're going to see Jerry Jones and NFL head coaches, and it's really a unique setting, and it's laid back, and the people down here in Mobile don't bother those folks, and so they really enjoy coming down. And yeah, last year was a huge success. We had 106 players drafted again, which tied our all-time high from the year before. So we're kind of at an all-time pace right now. That was 40% of last year's draft, and really the best number for us was we had 45 of the top 100 players in the draft, which it'd been over 10 years since we had a number close to that, because that 11 years ago is when the juniors really started to flood the NFL draft. So it's made getting some of those high round guys difficult. So to have 45 of the top 100 was a big year for us. And then this is the fun part, is when these guys start playing in the preseason and in the regular season and start making an impact with their clubs. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, it was a really good year. We had a fun year last year.
Any predictions on what you think is going to happen this year in football? You know football very well, but what's going to be a trend? You think that's going to be more offense, or the defense is going to catch up?
I don't know about trends. I think, and I'm not usually good at making prognostications. I did call the Georgia National Championship last year. I felt like that was a pretty easy call if you'd watch tape of that Georgia defense the summer before. This year, and I know I'm going to be asked this a bunch these next couple weeks down here in Mobile at some speaking engagements, but I would think this year would be Alabama. I don't see anyone that's going to be able to play with them. Just leadership on both sides of the ball. Will Anderson's really the main leader on that football team. You got the Heisman Trophy winner Bryce Young coming back, so it's gonna be another fun year. It's probably gonna be the same names up at the top. I think Clemson's gonna be poised for a bounce back year. They have a lot of NFL talent on that football team, so I wouldn't expect a 2-year dip for Dabo and his team. I think they'll come back. I think Ohio State will be in the mix. I think Michigan will be good again. So no, it's just going to be a fun year. I'm ready to kick it off.
Listen, thank you so much. Tell people how they can follow you and get their tickets in advance to the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, just seniorbowl.com on the internet. It's the best place to get tickets. And then if you want to follow along with everything we do, it's on our Senior Bowl Twitter or my Twitter account at Jim Nagy _SB for Senior Bowl. And like I said, we're going to be rolling out the watch list tomorrow. Almost 500 names. It's always our biggest day of the year in terms of traction. We've already let we've let all the colleges know like what players are going to be on the list. So they're busy right now creating some graphics and some videos around our game. So tomorrow's always a fun day in the office to see all these schools and all these players getting excited about coming to Mobile.
Hey, thank you so much for what you do, not just for college football, but pro football, but for the city of Mobile, Jim. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, Jimmy, Rob, thanks for having me on again, guys.
Okay, appreciate it. All right, Jimmy, think about Jim Nagy, what he just said. Yeah, it matters. I mean, they're looking at these guys, before a NFL team goes out and invests a lot of money in somebody, they want to know everything they can about you. You mentioned about transferring in high school. That's another problem. You transfer a couple of times in high school. Why? Why can't you get along with your teammates? What about when you get to college? You transfer another 2 or 3 times. That is an issue. We say it on this show, and it's interesting. And I'm not surprised to hear it from someone who has the credibility, the street cred, you might call it, that Jim Nagy has. But he has been to 6 Super Bowls in his 18 years in the NFL. 4 Super Bowl rings, 1 from the Packers, 2 from the Patriots, and 1 from the Seattle Seahawks. That's impressive. And we think about, Jimmy, how hard it is, even when you draft a player, to predict success. But I believe you can learn probably more than anything else. You will learn by how they play, how they perform in the biggest games on the biggest stage, against the toughest competition. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great trait to have, but at the same time, on an NFL roster, you've got to have guys that are going to go through a 17-game season. So you have to be focused every single week. And in this day and age, if you have one off week, that can cost you a playoff spot. So I think it's also important, though, to have guys that are cognizant of the importance of every single game. If they're playing a team that's 2-6, you still got to beat them. You prepare for them in a way that's going to prevent a letdown, because there's a reason that you almost never see an NFL game in which the point spread is double digits. I mean, it almost never happens.
That's a good point.
Just tells you how even that so many of these teams are talent-wise. It can just be a difference between maybe coaching staffs or maybe, key players being injured. There's just so many intangibles that are involved in this, but the talent level is not just drastically different. There might be a difference in high-profile positions in which certain teams are better than others. But then at the same time, some of those teams that aren't as good at the skill positions might be superior at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So again, you need players, though, that really learn to become professionals in a hurry, and they don't overlook opponents on a week-to-week basis, depending on if their record's 2-8, 3-9, because again, we've seen so many times in which teams that aren't expected to lose a game, that are having a big year, can lose one just because they're not focused.
Well, and here's something else. Talk about trends. Go back, 10 years ago, the dual threat quarterback. Oh, the NFL, you've got to be a drop back passer. You got to stand there. You got to be 6'5", like Peyton Manning or John Elway. Now you're seeing guys like Kyler Murray, who might be 5'9" with his helmet on, but he's a great athlete, and he just signed a 240 or 50 contract. As these drop back quarterbacks, the traditional pro style quarterbacks disappear, they retire, they're not around, they're being replaced by dual threat quarterbacks. One by one, more and more NFL teams, they all want Patrick Mahomes. And it just, of course, those guys don't come along that often, but you're seeing dual threat quarterbacks everywhere. And that's what we see in college, and now it's going to the NFL. So eventually every NFL team will have a Kyler Murray, a Patrick Mahomes type guy. You won't see the Peyton Mannings, the Brett Favres, the Aaron Rodgers. But, as soon as we see everything change, people will start, bringing in drop back passers. Everyone can't be right at the same time. And that's what we're seeing, in college now. It's all about getting it. In the SEC, it's very similar to the Big 12. You got to have edge rushers, and everybody in the SEC has to have those edge rushers on defense. Interior linemen, Georgia last year had an exceptional one in Jordan Davis at 6'7", 340 pounds. His job was to put teams in third and long. He probably played 35 or 40% of the snaps. He was taken in the first round. You know, his big challenge is going to be keeping his weight under control, under 400. I mean, in the NFL, it's different. You don't have to work. You don't have to go to these mandatory grind sessions at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning before class. They treat you as an adult. You're a professional employee. You work out. Some of those guys don't work out. And that's what you got to be in charge of everything when you get to the NFL. Jimmy, we're talking right now a lot about, and Jim Nagy, I know he had a tight schedule this morning. We had him on for about 18 minutes, and this allows us to kind of fill in some stuff because there's so much you want to ask these people. And Rodney Orr is on with us now, but I think about it with what's going on in college. You know, how many running backs? Okay, Bijan Robinson at Texas, he's a big time name, but look around the SEC. Chris Rodriguez, he's not even playing right now at Kentucky. He's suspended, I guess. Who are the super stud running backs in the SEC? Tank Bigsby is a really good one at Auburn, but it used to be everybody in this league could name them. So it's tough. Anyway, Rodney Orr, Tider Insider, is with us right now. Rodney, thanks for taking time out of your Tuesday morning. We're broadcasting live from Birmingham over here in Mountain Brook, down here, and talking some college football. And Rodney, we talked earlier, I got to go to the Coach Safely dinner last night at Vestavia Hills Country Club that Jack Crow and Kevin Skarbinski spearheaded. It was absolutely packed in there. And Lou Holtz and Paul Feinbaum did a great question and answer session. Paul Feinbaum, great at throwing the questions to Lou Holtz, and as only Lou Holtz can do, he gave Lou Holtz style answers. But there's certainly no lack of enthusiasm as we're 264 hours away from the start of week 3, not week 0, but week 3, and just a few days away from Friday night when Nevada plays. It's about 72 hours away from there. But let's talk about practice in Tuscaloosa. There's always something going on, offense, defense, special teams, and you can tell us like nobody else.
Well, they've gone through 2 scrimmages here. I'm sure you've, covered those, and, it sounds like everything's gone pretty well. There are some questions on this team that we've addressed on your show before, Rob, but, right now I think that, things are going pretty smoothly. I think Coach Saban has expressed that he's pleased with the progress that the offensive tackles have made. That's been a big question mark. I think the one thing that has popped up that's been interesting is at left guard, where Javian Cohen started every game last year, and now he's running second team behind Kendall Randolph, a 6-year player. And Kendall Randolph's played tackle, he's played guard, he's played blocking tight end. So it's really an interesting development. And I know that earlier this summer, Javian Cohen came out and expressed publicly that he was dealing with some mental health issues. He was quite open about that. And I don't know to what extent that might have had an impact on what's going on with the depth chart right now, but we'll see. Certainly hope everything goes well with him. And then you've got a bunch of wide receivers, young wide receivers. I think the big thing is that's kind of emerged in these 2 scrimmages is Kobe Prentice, the true freshman, working it as a slot type receiver. Guy that's already displaying big time playmaking ability. I think he's got like 12 scrimmages, a couple of touchdowns, has gotten some reps with the ones. So that's certainly big when you consider JoJo Earle's out, Aaron Anderson's out, guys that they thought could be contributors, major contributors, obviously, in JoJo Earle's case. And then also, I think another interesting development on last Saturday's scrimmage was Trayshawn Holden. He's been around a few years, he's like in his 3rd year here on campus or so, and he's he had a big game. He had a big scrimmage. He had 3 touchdown receptions. He had two touchdown receptions against the first defense of 60 and 75 yards. So that was a big play. And he had one earlier in the scrimmage of 45 yards. And but overall, those two big plays were basically the only thing that the first defense gave up the whole scrimmage. They've been pretty stout in both scrimmages. So, right now I think the focus is starting to turn towards Utah State.
Well, look, Utah State, it's not a household name. The Aggies, they're pretty good. They've had some success. They've been on the radar, and it'll be a tougher challenge because it's the first game, and everything that can go wrong, it seems like, goes wrong in that first game. But that's why you play it and you work things out, making sure you got enough players on the field or you don't have too many players on the field. When I look at this Alabama team, the thing I keep going back to every week, I like to check the progress, is the running back situation. And you look at all the talent you can bring in. That's why people say, why do you keep signing these running backs? Well, look at last year in the national championship game, Brian Robinson, that was I think it was the only healthy scholarship running back ready to go. And we talk about Trey Sanders trying to come back from his injuries in his car wreck. I mean, he's lucky he survived that. We're going to take a break. We're going to get back and talk about the room and where they are, because it all starts up front with the offensive line. Rodney Orr with Rob Brown and Jimmy Hodge after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back with Rodney Orr and Jimmy Hodge. Rodney Orr, Tyler Insider, talking about this running back room at Alabama. Let's pick it up from last year, now where they are heading into the season opener in 11 days, depth-wise.
Well, I think it's night and day, obviously. I mean, the only running back you had that was fully healthy last year towards the end of the year, although Trey Sanders had made a lot of improvement, was Brian Robinson. And Brian had a pretty good hamstring injury. I say injury. It was a little bit of a strained injury there on his hamstring. And, it slowed him down in the SEC championship game some. And, but you look at it now, and what they have is, you've got Jahmyr Gibbs, the transfer from Georgia Tech, has just been incredible in the scrimmages in fall camp. He showed a lot of that in the spring as well. And then you've got Jace McClellan's back, who's a really outstanding back in his own right. Had a really good scrimmage on Saturday, displayed some of his old quickness and his ability to cut back, made some really strong runs, had a couple of touchdowns. And Trey Sanders, then also Roydell Williams is running really well coming off his injury. And true freshman Jamarian Miller is also a kid that was originally committed to Texas, flipped to Alabama last year. He's shown a lot of promise as well. So pretty stout running back room. Coach Saban said a couple of days ago that he had 5 guys he felt really good about right now. Yeah. So I'd say that the running back room seems to be in pretty good shape right now. But like you said, Rob, you've got to have a lot of them stacked up because they can you can lose that depth very quickly.
Yeah, and I cannot help but go back to Roydell Williams in high school at Hueytown. Good grief. I mean, his video game numbers and stats, and you imagine what he's going to be like when he's 100% healthy, if that's possible to do. And then, of course, Jahmyr Gibbs out of Dalton, Georgia, came from Georgia Tech. I think the first carry in the A-Day game, he goes 75 yards for a touchdown. There's a lot of talent there. And again, the one thing we know happens at Alabama is players are developed. So, I mean, that's if you're an Alabama fan, you got to be encouraged by what you just said about the running back room. Jimmy Hodge, jump in here with Rodney Orr. I know you got some questions about the Tide.
Well, now that the scrimmages are out of the way, do you look for an official depth chart to be listed anytime soon, or that is kind of the tradition, although at certain positions, especially quarterback in the past, Saban has waited till late in the process, but obviously he won this year. But I would like to know, because we've heard almost nothing about them up to this point, at least publicly, how is that backup quarterback competition going, according maybe to your sources that you've been able to communicate?
Mm-hmm. Well, I say on the depth chart, I don't expect anything to be released until next Monday, which would be, leading up to the opener against Utah State. Usually in his press conference that day, and then Coach Saban releases the depth chart to the media. And a lot of times, what you see is at a position you may see a slash, meaning that it could be either or. At that position. So we'll see how that unfolds. But as far as the backups are concerned, I just think because he's been around longer, that Jalen Milroe is probably going to run number 2 officially on the depth chart. I think that, obviously he's improving his passing, but he's just an incredible athlete. Things he can do with his feet. He's got to improve his consistency as a passer, though. I think Ty Simpson has a tremendous amount of ability. I think he's a guy that has all the tools to follow in the line of the last 3 when you talk about, Tua, Mac Jones, and Bryce Young. I think Ty has, that kind of potential. Just learning right now. I think they're putting both of those guys in difficult situations. I mean, when they have to face the first defense or whatever it might be, and you're under constant duress, constant pressure, having to make quick decisions, smart decisions. Sometimes it's not about making the throw. It's about making the right decision. Coach Saban would rather see you throw it away or do whatever you can do to avoid a bad play first. So I think that's kind of the situations they're trying to put, they put Ty in for sure, and Milroe to an extent as well, just to kind of show them what exactly it's going to be when they're under the fire of a real game.
Rodney, breaking it down another step, you're right about the quarterback. It's not about throwing the ball. I mean, sometimes it's just eating it and taking a sack too, because you try to make a play when you really shouldn't. I mean, scoop and score for a touchdown, and that flips the game. And suddenly you're behind, and you don't want to do anything that puts your team in a position to fail. And I think that mental discipline is so apparent throughout Alabama's football program. Is guys make an interception in the end zone, and rather than try to run it out, they will just their teammates will come up to them, take a knee. You're it's going to be at the 20 anyway. Now, if it's an obvious case where there's nobody near you and you can bolt down the right side for 100 yards, go for it. But you just see the little things like that. And on the coaching staff of Alabama, what are you concerned about, offense or defense or special teams going into the season? Because there's always an area that keeps you up at night. But that's why they pay those coaches a lot of money, is to fix those problems.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think right now, if I look at it on the offensive side, of course, obviously, until this offensive line comes together and you see them kind of gelling, and that is going to be a concern, because that's where it starts up front. And I think, the receivers being on the same page with Bryce, will these 4 right now that are probably the top 4, which would be Jermaine Burton, Ja'Cory Brooks, Trayshawn Holden, and Kobe Prentice. And again, there's some other guys that can get in that mix and that are close behind. But will all these guys kind of come together? How quickly will Cam Latu be back? I think we're going to see him back next week sometime, if not sooner, hopefully. And he'll be ready to go at tight end. But if that's the things offensively, I think on the defensive side of the ball right now, corner really sticks out to me because they've had some inconsistencies and some injuries there that have slowed down Corey Jackson, that have slowed down Elias Ricks. Right now, I mean, it looks like to me, based on the two scrimmages, as we start to move forward, that Kool-Aid McKinstry's probably got the inside track at the one corner, and then redshirt freshman Terrion Arnold at the other. A star recruit coming out of high school, redshirted last year, thought he was going to be a safety, but he's done a really good job as a corner. He's a very athletic kid and very competitive. So it looks like to me, if I was guessing right now, and again, it's guessing, I would say at that Utah State game, I would think that you would see McKinstry and Terrion Arnold starting at the corners. And, hopefully Corey Jackson continues to improve. He's had a little bit of a groin injury, and Coach Saban said he did scrimmage about three quarters of the time last Saturday. But right now, I would probably just give a slight edge to Arnold being that corner alongside Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Got a question from a listener. Jim Swarthow, Provo, Utah, says Utah State has had success in the last few years, but they don't play an SEC schedule. What kind of chance do you give them to stay within 3 touchdowns against Alabama?
Well, I know they were 11-3 last year. I haven't looked at them that closely yet.
Yeah.
But it is the first game, and they're believing. They've got good coaching. I think their program's obviously seems to be pretty solid. So I mean, I don't think that there's anyone here, and I say anyone, I'm talking about realistically, that is approaching this with the mindset that Alabama's going to blow them out. Now, listen, that way may well happen, but that's not the way the approach is here. That's not the way Nick Saban approaches it. That's not the way the players approach it. It's hammered home. They have faceless opponents. So is Alabama taking this extremely seriously? Yeah. So I don't think anyone here is predicting, 3 touchdown victory or 4 touchdown, whatever it might be. Now, could it turn into that? Like I said, absolutely. But that's not the approach here.
Well, I like that approach because, Utah State, they're going to come in sky high, just playing at Bryant-Denny Stadium. But again, you look at Alabama, and we had this discussion with Jordan Hill in the first segment, who covers Georgia for 24/7 Sports. And he was saying, we were talking about, Kirby had been at Alabama with Nick Saban. They won 4 national championships. And Jordan Hill was talking about, I'm trying to remember which national championship it was. I mean, that's a hell of a problem to have, to get to stumble. But you've got that kind of success. But I think when you watch Nick Saban, what motivates him is he loves to be successful. He's got a need to succeed, an insatiable appetite for success. And people think, I don't think you should read it as he doesn't appreciate and enjoy the moment. I believe he truly does, but he just wants more of it. There's not a few things worse than doing a good job and sitting on your ass and thinking that's all you got to do. Well, you got to get up tomorrow and do it again and again and keep on finding excuses to win. And so that's why
I think, yeah, I think his biggest enemy is complacency.
Yep. There you go.
And not him, not that he has to necessarily fight it as much as he has to fight against those players, the coaching staff, and all the people within the organization becoming complacent and focusing on, what they just did, because that's over. That's in the past now, Yeah. I mean, it's great to win championships, but to be honest with you, and you know how it is these days, Jimmy and Rob, before midnight of that national championship game, when it's over, they've already got a top 25 for next year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's always moving forward.
The way too early top 25, but you're right. The only easy day was yesterday. And Lou Holtz talked about it last night. Your circumstances are what they are. It's what you decide to do with them. I mean, again, we all know Helen Keller. We all know about her. We all know what she did. She was blind, and there are other people who are blind, but we know about Helen Keller because of what she did with being blind and deaf, as my wife just reminded me. Think about that. I mean, stuff happens to you in life. A lot of times there ain't a damn thing you can do about it, but you got to keep on. And I think, this is a really good book John Talty released August 9th, leadership lessons of Nick Saban, why he's the greatest coach ever. It was a lot of stuff that people didn't really know about him, but you learn the habits of highly successful people. They don't listen to negativity. They don't get around negative people. There's a lot to be said about that. Jimmy, we got a few more minutes with Rodney Orr of Tider Insider. It's only $48 a year, folks. If you ain't a subscriber, you're not a Tider Insider. That was bad.
Rodney,
I'll keep my day job.
I found it interesting that in both of the scrimmages, Saban has, publicly stated concern about his second string offensive line. And again, I was just looking to get your feelings about it because, they struggled in the spring game. And I know Eric Walford has received rave reviews, not only from his time at Kentucky, where just in this past draft, they had, I think, 2 offensive linemen drafted for the first time in a recent memory. But Saban has openly praised him about the work he's done with the line. What's the level of concern if there was an injury, especially at one of those tackles? Because the 2 tackles listed, as the second teamers have had their struggles. And also wanted to ask about Ikayor, if he's 100% healthy, because there's been concern, about a couple of his nagging injuries. And then one more guy, and you've mentioned him, highly touted player, Eli Ricks, with a high ceiling, obviously a future NFL player. He'll be a corner, but he missed the second half of the season last year at LSU due to injuries, and reportedly, he had been struggling overcoming that injury, and then he's also had a few nagging injuries here at Alabama he's been trying to overcome in addition to learning a new system.
Well, I think the second team offensive linemen right now, they're still trying to get that first 5, even though they've done well. I think the progress they've made is something that has been encouraging. But you mentioned the second OL, and other than Javian Cohen and Seth McLaughlin, that would give you 7 players that I think are certainly, we know, I don't want to say are capable. I think they're all capable, but maybe they could fill in without, losing much of a beat. But the tackles, Amari Kite at left tackle, he's been around a while, certainly a guy with a lot of potential. Damian George really struggled last year. I think his feet, in terms of just being able to, pass protect, he's a massive guy, but it's just, the quick, fast defensive ends and outside backers gave him a lot of trouble in pass protection. So there is a concern there, not necessarily with Damian George. I'm talking about just if there were an issue at tackle, one of the tackle spots. As far as Eli Ricks is concerned, he just, like you said, he had a shoulder injury at LSU. He got here in the spring, had a lot to learn about this defense, the way they do things, the way they practice, the style of defense, what his responsibilities are, the calls, how to communicate, all the things that go with playing. Those are things that he has still working with, adjusting to, and all of that. On top of, I got here, his weight was down, his strength was down. He's trying to recover from that, rebound physically. So I just think that he's got still a little ways to go. I think he's got a little bit of a ways to go before he's going to be ready to really maybe be a threat to be in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
But he's certainly very, very talented for sure. I think Coach Saban said he had a little bit of a back issue in this last scrimmage as well. So just got to get healthy.
Yeah.
And figure out what he's doing.
Yeah, Rodney, listen, guys, we've run out of time here. Tider Insider, it's only $48 a year. Tell people how they can follow you. We got about 20 seconds.
Okay, yep, TiderInsider.com. Like you said, only $48 a year. If you're an Alabama fan, you get instant access with a credit card if you prefer. There is an address there to send a check, gives you all our premium information, but also our All Sports Forum, that community of Alabama fans. I mean, it's nonstop with information, always loaded and going with information.
Hey, great show. And Rodney, always love having you on here. Jimmy, remember, go out, help somebody with the expectation of nothing in return. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Live in the greatest country in the world, folks. Act like it. Be happy. Quit feeling sorry for yourselves. We'll have a great show tomorrow. We'll be back with you. Until then, take care. Have a great one. We're out of here.